And we're back. Got another awesome episode for you today. But first of all, I want to say a huge thank you to all the new subscribers that are jumping on over on YouTube. All the episodes of the podcast are now getting streamed onto YouTube as well. So if you prefer to listen on YouTube, you can do that. If you are listening on YouTube, thank you. Don't forget to subscribe. I would love it if we could get to 1,000 subscribers. That's kind of when a YouTube channel can really go places. So if you could help me get there, just go to anotherworldaudiobooks.com. There's a link directly over to the YouTube channel. If you search Another World, a lot of weird stuff comes up non-related to the podcast, so make sure to go to anotherworldaudiobooks.com, click the YouTube button, you can pop over there, just hit a subscribe, and I would really appreciate it if you could support the show in that way. Thank you to everyone who is on YouTube and is listening there, and anybody who's listening anywhere. I appreciate all the listens. I'll take whatever I can get. With that said, without further ado, I want to give you the next chapter of Arsène Lupin. 7. Madame Ambert's Safe. At 3 o'clock in the morning, there were still half a dozen carriages in front of one of those small houses which form only the side of the Boulevard Berthier. The door of that house opened, and a number of guests, male and female, emerged. The majority of them entered their carriages and were quickly driven away, leaving behind only 2 men who walked down Courcelles, where they parted, as one of them lived in that street. The other decided to return on foot as far as the Porte-Maillot. It was a beautiful winter's night, clear and cold, a night on which a brisk walk is agreeable and refreshing. But at the end of a few minutes, he had the disagreeable impression that he was being followed. Turning around, he saw a man skulking amongst the trees. He was not a coward, yet he felt it advisable to increase his speed. Then his pursuer commenced to run, and he deemed it prudent to draw his revolver and face him. But he had no time. The man rushed at him and attacked him violently. Immediately, they were engaged in a desperate struggle, wherein he felt that his unknown assailant had the advantage. He called for help, struggled, and was thrown down on a pile of gravel, seized by the throat, and gagged with a handkerchief that his assailant forced into his mouth. His eyes closed, and the man who was smothering him with his weight arose to defend himself against an unexpected attack. A blow from a cane and a kick from a boot. The man uttered 2 cries of pain and fled, limping and cursing. Without deigning to pursue the fugitive, the new arrival stooped over the prostrate man and inquired, "Are you hurt, monsieur?" He was not injured, but he was dazed and unable to stand. His rescuer procured a carriage, placed him in it, and accompanied him to his house on the Avenue de la Grande Armée. On his arrival there, quite recovered, he overwhelmed his saviour with thanks. "I owe you my life, monsieur, and I shall not forget it. I do not wish to alarm my wife at this time of night, but tomorrow she will be pleased to thank you personally. Come and breakfast with us. My name is Ludwig Ambert. May I ask yours?" "Certainly, monsieur." And he handed Monsieur Ambert a card bearing the name Arsène Lupin. At that time, Arsène Lupin did not enjoy the celebrity which the Cahorn affair, his escape from the prison de la Santé, and other brilliant exploits afterwards gained for him. He had not even used the name of Arsène Lupin. The name was specially invented to designate the rescuer of Monsieur Ambert. That is to say, it was in that affair that Arsène Lupin was baptized. Fully armed and ready for the fray, it is true, but lacking the resources and authority which command success, Arsène Lupin was then merely an apprentice in a profession wherein he soon became a master. With what a thrill of joy he recalled the invitation he received that night. At last he had reached his goal. At last he had undertaken a task worthy of his strength and skill. The Ambert millions. What a magnificent feast for an appetite like his. He prepared a special toilet for the occasion. A shabby frock coat, baggy trousers, a frayed silk hat, well-worn collar and cuffs, all quite correct in form, but bearing the unmistakable stamp of poverty. His cravat was a black ribbon pinned with a false diamond. Thus accoutré, he descended the stairs of the house in which he lived at Montmartre. At the 3rd floor, without stopping, he rapped on a closed door with the head of his cane. He walked to the exterior boulevards. A tram-car was passing. He boarded it, and someone who had been following him took a seat beside him. It was the lodger who occupied the room on the 3rd floor. A moment later, this man said to Lupin, "Well, governor?" Well, it is all fixed. How? I am going there to breakfast.
You? Breakfast? There?
Certainly, why not? I rescued Monsieur Ludovic Humbert from certain death at your hands. Monsieur Humbert is not devoid of gratitude. He invited me to breakfast. There was a brief silence, then the other said,
But you were not going to throw up the scheme?
My dear boy, said Lupin, when I arranged that little case of assault and battery, when I took the trouble at 3 o'clock in the morning to rap you with my cane and tap you with my boot at the risk of injuring my only friend, it was not my intention to forego the advantages to be gained from a rescue so well arranged and executed. Oh no, not at all.
But the strange rumours we hear about their fortune.
Never mind about that. For 6 months I've worked on this affair, investigated it, studied it, questioned the servants, the moneylenders, the men of straw. For 6 months I've shadowed the husband and wife. Consequently, I know what I'm talking about. Whether the fortune came to them from old Brawford as they pretend, or from some other source, I do not care. I know that it is a reality, that it exists, and someday it will be mine.
Big, 100 million.
Let us say 10 or even 5. That is enough. They have a safe full of bonds, and there will be the devil to pay if I can't get my hands on them. The tramcar stopped at the Place de l'Etoile. The man whispered to Lupin.
What am I to do now?
Nothing at present. You will hear from me. There is no hurry. 5 minutes later, Arsène Lupin was ascending the magnificent flight of stairs in the Humbert mansion, and Monsieur Humbert introduced him to his wife. Madame Gervaise Humbert was a short, plump woman, and very talkative. She gave Lupin a cordial welcome.
I desired that we should be alone to entertain our saviour,
she said. From the outset, they treated our saviour as an old and valued friend. By the time dessert was served, their friendship was well cemented, and private confidences were being exchanged. Arsène related the story of his life, the life of his father as a magistrate, the sorrows of his childhood, and his present difficulties. Gervaise, in turn, spoke of her youth, her marriage, the kindness of the aged Brawford, the 100 millions that she had inherited, the obstacles that prevented her from obtaining the enjoyment of her inheritance, the money she had been obliged to borrow at an exorbitant rate of interest, her endless contentions with Brawford's nephews, and the litigation, the injunctions, in fact, everything.
Just think of it, Monsieur Lupin. The bonds are there in my husband's office, and if we detach a single coupon, we lose everything. They are there in our safe, and we dare not touch them.
Monsieur Lupin shivered at the bare idea of his proximity to so much wealth. Yet he felt quite certain that Monsieur Lupin would never suffer from the same difficulty of his fair hostess, who declared she dare not touch the money.
They are there,
he repeated to himself.
They are there.
A friendship formed under such circumstances soon led to closer relations. When discreetly questioned, Arsène Lupin confessed his poverty and distress. Immediately, the unfortunate young man was appointed private secretary to the Humberts, husband and wife, at a salary of 100 francs a month. He was to come to the house every day and receive orders for his work, and a room on the second floor was set apart as his office. This room was directly over Monsieur Humbert's office. Arsène soon realized that his position as secretary was essentially a sinecure. During the first 2 months, he had only 4 important letters to recopy, and was called only once to Monsieur Humbert's office. Consequently, he had only one opportunity to contemplate officially the Humbert safe. Moreover, he noticed that the secretary was not invited to the social functions of the employer. But he did not complain, as he preferred to remain modestly in the shade and maintain his peace and freedom. However, he was not wasting any time. From the beginning, he made clandestine visits to Monsieur Humbert's office, and paid his respects to the safe, which was hermetically closed. It was an immense block of iron and steel, cold and stern in appearance, which could not be forced open by the ordinary tools of the burglar's trade. But Arsène Lupin was not discouraged. "Where force fails, cunning prevails," he said to himself. "The essential thing is to be on the spot when the opportunity occurs. In the meantime, I must watch and wait." He made immediately some preliminary preparations. After careful soundings made upon the floor of his room, he introduced a lead pipe which penetrated the ceiling of Monsieur Humbert's office at a point between two screeds of the cornice. By means of this pipe, he hoped to see and hear what transpired in the room below. Henceforth, he passed his days stretched at full length upon the floor. He frequently saw the Humberts holding a consultation in the front of the safe, investigating books and papers. When they turned the combination lock, he tried to learn the figures and the number of turns they made to the right and left. He watched their movements. He sought to catch their words. There was also a key necessary to complete the opening of the safe. What did they do with it? Did they hide it? One day, he saw them leave the room without locking the safe. He descended the stairs quickly and boldly entered the room, but they had returned. "Oh, excuse me," he said. "I made a mistake in the door."
"Come in, Monsieur Lupin, come in,"
cried Madame Humbert.
"Are you not at home here? We want your advice. What bonds should we sell, the foreign securities or the government annuities?"
"But the injunction," said Lupin with surprise.
"Oh, it doesn't cover all the bonds."
She opened the door of the safe and withdrew a package of bonds, but her husband protested.
No, Gervais, it would be foolish to sell the foreign bonds. They are going up, whilst the annuities are as high as they will ever be. What do you think, my dear friend?"
The dear friend had no opinion, yet he advised the sacrifice of the annuities. Then she withdrew another package, and from it she took a paper at random. It proved to be a 3% annuity worth 2,000 francs. Ludovic placed the package of bonds in his pocket. That afternoon, accompanied by his secretary, he sold the annuities to a stockbroker and realized 46,000 francs. Whatever Madame Humbert might have said about it, Arsène Lupin did not feel at home in the Humbert house. On the contrary, his position there was a peculiar one. He learned that the servants did not even know his name. They called him Monsieur. Ludovic always spoke of him in the same way.
"You will tell Monsieur. Has Monsieur arrived?"
Why that mysterious appellation? Moreover, after their first outburst of enthusiasm, the Humberts seldom spoke to him, and although treating him with the consideration due to a benefactor, they gave him little or no attention. They appeared to regard him as an eccentric character who did not like to be disturbed, and they respected his isolation as if it were a stringent rule on his part. On one occasion, while passing through the vestibule, he heard Madame Humbert say to the two gentlemen,
"He is such a barbarian."
"Very well," he said to himself. "I am a barbarian." And, without seeking to solve the question of their strange conduct, he proceeded with the execution of his own plans. He had decided that he could not depend on chance, nor on the negligence of Madame Humbert, who carried the key of the safe, and who, on locking the safe, invariably scattered the letters forming the combination of the lock. Consequently, he must act for himself. Finally, an incident precipitated matters. It was the vehement campaign instituted against the Humberts by certain newspapers that accused the Humberts of swindling. Arsène Lupin was present at certain family conferences when this new vicissitude was discussed. He decided that if he waited much longer, he would lose everything. During the next 5 days, instead of leaving the house about 6 o'clock, according to his usual habit, he locked himself in his room. It was supposed that he had gone out, but he was lying on the floor, surveying the office of Monsieur Humbert. During those 5 evenings, the favourable opportunity that he awaited did not take place. He left the house about midnight by a side door to which he held the key. But on the 6th day, he learned that the Humberts, actuated by the malevolent insinuations of their enemies, proposed to make an inventory of the contents of the safe. "They will do it tonight," thought Lupin. And truly, after dinner, Humbert and his wife retired to the office and commenced to examine the book of account and the securities contained in the safe. Thus, 1 hour after another passed away. He heard the servants go upstairs to their rooms. No one now remained on the first floor. Midnight. The Humberts were still at work. "I must get to work," murmured Lupin. He opened his window. It opened on a court. Outside everything was dark and quiet. He took from his desk a knotted rope, fastened it to the balcony in front of his window, and quietly descended as far as the window below, which was that of the Humberts' office. He stood upon the balcony for a moment, motionless, with attentive ear and watchful eye, but the heavy curtains effectually concealed the interior of the room. He cautiously pushed on the double window. If no one had examined it, it ought to yield to the slightest pressure, for during the afternoon he had so fixed the bolt that it would not enter the staple. The window yielded to his touch. Then, with infinite care, he pushed it open sufficiently to admit his head. He parted the curtains a few inches, looked in, and saw Monsieur Humbert and his wife sitting in front of the safe, deeply absorbed in their work, and speaking softly to each other at rare intervals. He calculated the distance between him and them, considered the exact movements he would require to make in order to overcome them, one after the other, before they could call for help, and he was about to rush upon them when Madame Humbert said,
"Ah, the room is getting quite cold. I am going to bed. Are you, my dear?"
I shall stay and finish.
"Finish? Why, that will take you all night."
Not at all. An hour at the most.
She retired. 20 minutes. 30 minutes passed. Arsène pushed the window a little farther open. The curtains shook. He pushed once more. Monsieur Humbert turned, and, seeing the curtains blown by the wind, he rose to close the window. There was not a cry, not the trace of a struggle. With a few precise movements, and without causing him the least injury, Arsène stunned him, wrapped the curtain about his head, bound him hand and foot, and did it all in such a manner that Monsieur Humbert had no opportunity to recognize his assailant. Quickly he approached the safe, seized 2 packages that he placed under his arm, left the office, and opened the servants' gate. A carriage was stationed in the street. "Take that first, and follow me," he said to the coachman. He returned to the office, and in 2 trips they emptied the safe. Then Arsène went to his own room, removed the rope, and all other traces of his clandestine work. A few hours later, Arsène Lupin and his assistant examined the stolen goods. Lupin was not disappointed, as he had foreseen that the wealth of the Humberts had been greatly exaggerated. It did not consist of hundreds of millions, nor even tens of millions, yet it amounted to a very respectable sum, and Lupin expressed his satisfaction. "Of course," he said, "there will be a considerable loss when we come to sell the bonds, as we will have to dispose of them surreptitiously at reduced prices. In the meantime, they will rest quietly in my desk, awaiting a propitious moment." Arsène saw no reason why he should not go to the Humbert house the next day, but a perusal of the morning papers revealed this startling fact. Ludovic and Gervais Humbert had disappeared. When the officers of the law seized the safe and opened it, they found there what Arsène Lupin had left. Nothing. Such are the facts, and I learned the sequel to them one day when Arsène Lupin was in a confidential mood. He was pacing to and fro in my room, with a nervous step and a feverish eye that were unusual to him. "After all," I said to him, "it was your most successful venture." Without making a direct reply, he said, "There are some impenetrable secrets connected with that affair, some obscure points that escape my comprehension. For instance, what caused their flight? Why did they not take advantage of the help I unconsciously gave them? It would have been so simple to say the 100 millions were in the safe, they are no longer there because they have been stolen." "They lost their nerve." "Yes, that is it. They lost their nerve. On the other hand, it is true—" "What is true?" "Oh, nothing." What was the meaning of Lupin's reticence? It was quite obvious that he had not told me everything. There was something he was loath to tell. His conduct puzzled me. It must indeed be a very serious matter to cause such a man as Arsène Lupin even a momentary hesitation. I threw out a few questions at random. "Have you seen them since?" "No." "And have you never experienced the slightest degree of pity for those unfortunate people?" "I?" he exclaimed with a start. His sudden excitement astonished me. Had I touched him on a sore spot? I continued, "Of course. If you had left them alone, they might have been able to face the danger, or at least make their escape with full pockets." "What do you mean?" he said indignantly. "I suppose you have an idea that my soul should be filled with remorse." "Call it remorse or regrets, anything you like. They are not worth it. Have you no regrets or remorse for having stolen their fortune?" "What fortune?" "The package of bonds you took from their safe." "Oh, I stole their bonds, did I? I deprived them of a portion of their wealth. Is that my crime? Ha, my dear boy, you do not know the truth. You never imagined that those bonds were not worth the paper they were written on. Those bonds were false. They were counterfeit, every one of them.
Do you understand? They were counterfeit!
I looked at him, astounded. Counterfeit? The 4 or 5 millions?
Yes, counterfeit!
He exclaimed in a fit of rage.
Only so many scraps of paper. I couldn't raise a sou on the whole of them. And you ask me if I have any remorse. They are the ones who should have remorse and pity. They played me for a simpleton, and I fell into their trap. I was their latest victim, their most stupid goal.
He was affected with genuine anger, the result of malice and wounded pride. He continued.
From start to finish, I got the worst of it. Do you know the part I played in that affair? Or rather the part they made me play, that of André Brawford. Yes, my boy, that is the truth, and I never suspected it. It was not until afterwards, on reading the newspapers, that the light finally dawned in my stupid brain. Whilst I was posing as his saviour, as the gentleman who had risked his life to rescue Monsieur Humbert from the clutches of an assassin, they were passing me off as Brawford. Wasn't that splendid? That eccentric individual who had a room on the second floor, that barbarian that was exhibited only at a distance, was Brawford, and Brawford was I. Thanks to me, and to the confidence that I inspired under the name of Brawford, they were enabled to borrow money from the bankers and other money-lenders. What an experience for a novice, and I swear to you that I shall profit by the lesson.
He stopped, seized my arm, and said to me in a tone of exasperation,
My dear fellow, at this very moment, Gervais Humbert owes me 1,500 francs.
I could not refrain from laughter. His rage was so grotesque. He was making a mountain out of a molehill. In a moment, he laughed himself and said,
Yes, my boy, 1,500 francs. You must know that I had not received 1 sou of my promised salary, and more than that, she had borrowed from me the sum of 1,500 francs, all my youthful savings. And do you know why? To devote the money to charity. I'm giving you a straight story. She wanted it for some poor people she was assisting, unknown to her husband, and my hard-earned money was wormed out of me by that silly pretense. Isn't that amusing, all? Arsène Lupin done out of 1,500 francs by the fair lady from whom he stole 4 million in counterfeit bonds. And what a vast amount of time and patience and cunning I expended to achieve that result. It was the first time in my life that I was played for a fool, and I frankly confess that I was fooled that time to the Queen's taste. Whoa, I think out of all the mysteries, that was the one I did not see coming. The scammer got scammed. The burglar got burgled. That was a good one. I hope you guys are enjoying the stories so far. I would love to hear from you. Hit me up, anotherworldaudiobooks@gmail.com. You can also go to anotherworldaudiobooks.com and contact me there. A bunch of different ways to get in touch and ways to support the podcast. But really, the biggest thing after you subscribed on YouTube is just to tell other people about the podcast. Spread the word about the show. If you are listening and have been listening for any amount of time and you like it, then just tell other people about it. Get some other listeners on board. It's more fun when you can discuss these fun stories with other people and stuff. So I really appreciate your help in spreading the word, and we'll catch you next week with another brand new episode.